Hey guys, welcome back. It's time for some more reloading content. I try to cycle between the various subjects so that you have something to watch on a regular basis. Today's video is going to be about seating depth and its impact on velocity variation, because I get this question all the time. The question is usually phrased something like, my seating depth varies 3 thousandths, 4 thousandths, or 5 thousandths. What does this do to my ES and SD? And the answer to that question isn't as simple as going out and doing a test by varying seating depth, because there's a question inside of that question. And I want to point out how we need to be very careful in answering these questions as a influencer community to make sure that we're giving you good information that makes sense, that will help you get where you want to be in your shooting. Because ultimately, the only reason that I'm here, the only reason I'm still here after 3 or 4 years, is to help you get better at your shooting. I'm not getting rich doing this, and I don't expect to ever do so. Instead, I want to make shooting more fun for all of you. More, well, fulfilling. So back to the question at hand. The first thing we have to do is understand whether changing the seating depth actually makes any difference in velocity whatsoever. Because if we can't answer that question, we can't answer the other question. So taking advantage of some of the testing I was recently doing on a new 6-dasher barrel with a new bullet, let's take a look at what happens to the velocity when we change the seating depth a large amount, because I was doing a full span seating depth test. So I started at 5 thousandths off of the lands, and I got a velocity of 2,838 feet per second on average for 5 shots. I then worked back all the way to 66 thousandths off the lands and got an average velocity of 2,813 feet a second. Now, to me, that's a 25 foot a second change over 61 thousandths of seating depth. And when I looked at all the interim sections, they were pretty consistently changing over that span. The further I got from the lands, the lower the velocity went, no matter how counterintuitive that might be to you. I realized that moving the bullet into the case is going to reduce the combustion chamber inside of the case with the bullet still seated, but that doesn't mean that we're going to assume a smaller overall chamber for the purposes of our pressure calculation, which highlights something that I want to explain to you very clearly. We, and I say we as all the experts and all of the pontificators on the internet, have one thing in common, and that is not a single one of us has the instrumentation or the ability to see exactly what happens in the chamber when we fire a rifle. It's simply not possible to see that information. We have to surmise what has happened based on the resultant velocity or the resultant chamber pressure as measured by distortion of the barrel during the firing process, that is, the elastic stretching of the barrel itself during firing, or some other combination of information that we get resultant from the firing. We don't see what actually happens inside of the chamber. For example, I'm going to tell you what we surmise here at my channel about the reason for that reduction in velocity as a result of a distance increase from the lands. And it's pretty simple. During the firing process, the bullet has to get from where it starts to a point where it has engraved in the lands and has sealed the bore as best it's going to. Now, it's not going to completely seal the bore. We understand that very clearly, that there's going to be some escape of gas past the bullet while it's going down the bore. It's kind of a given anytime you have two surfaces sliding against each other and one has been pressure formed to the other. The gaps are not perfect, and as a result, you're going to get some gas leakage here or there. But that's not what I think, specifically me, is the major source of the gases that bypass the bullet before it gets to the muzzle. Now, how do I know that bullets have gas past it before it gets to the muzzle? Well, I watch high-speed video like you do. Other creators, like, Ballistic High Speed, make lots of videos of muzzle exit of rifle bullets. And when they make those videos, it is inevitable that we're going to see a cloud of gas exit the muzzle before the bullet arrives. Then we have to ask the question, how did the gas get there before the bullet? Did all that bypass the bullet while it was in the bore, sliding down the bore? Or did some of it get past before it engraved? And my answer is most likely, I surmise, that it got past it before it engraved. As a matter of fact, we as a community surmise a lot of things about what's going on in the chamber that maybe aren't entirely true. It's kind of like some other communities that you take, life lessons from, that just don't have any idea what's really going on. They're just guessing. So putting aside the guess as to what's causing this consistently observed phenomenon, as I tend to call it, let's talk about the reality of this. If we say that a very linear change in velocity occurs from 5 thousandths off to 66 thousandths off, which is 61 thousandths, and we're going to change that velocity 25 feet a second, we do a little bit of math and find out that the velocity changes on average 1.23 feet per second per 3 thousandths increment that we change the seating depth. So if you're getting a variation of 3 thousandths in your seating depth from round to round, the most ES difference you're going to see is irrelevant to that measurement, because that's not what the real question was. The real question had nothing to do with the final position of the bullet itself. It had to do with how it got that way, because the difference in velocity is going to be relative to why the bullet is not in the same place from round to round to round. For example, you could have this difference in seating depth as a result of die setting changes during your loading process. If you have a die that's unscrewing itself slowly as you're loading ammunition, you're going to get a difference in seating depth over time, and that's going to have one effect. This could be very similar to what I saw in the dasher. However, if you have a situation where you've overcleaned the necks and the bullets are naked and they gall to each other when you're seating the bullet, and that's resulting in huge force buildups as you're pushing that bullet in, and that results in big variations in seating depth, you're going to get a completely different result in your velocity variation. Worse yet, those aren't the only two ways that you can get there. You can have huge differences in neck tension, so to speak, neck interference fit, neck friction fit, if you will, based on differences in sizing process or differences in brass hardness, all of which can have deleterious effects on your velocity variation. And last but not least, you can be crunching powder so hard when you're pushing the bullet into the case that it's actually popping the bullet back out after you're done seating it, and that could have yet a different effect on your velocity variation. So guys, I can't tell you for sure what it's going to do to your ES and SD if your seating depth varies from round to round to round, 1 thousandths, 2 thousandths, or 3 thousandths, much less if it's varying 5 to 10 thousandths. What I can tell you is that consistency is king in this area. If you're having problems getting those bullets seated to the exact same depth from bullet to bullet to bullet, you need to go do a little bit of investigation and figure out why. If you're having galling problems, you need to decide whether your cleaning process is working for you or against you. If you're having maybe problems with crunching powder, whether implementing a drop tube into your powder process would be helpful to reduce the amount of powder crunching that's resulting in this problem. And if you're having problems with your seating depth varying because your neck hardness is varying from case to case, maybe you should keep all your cases the same number of firings. And last but not least, if you're having problems with your sizing process not getting the same result over and over again, you need to look at that and figure out why that's going on. Do you have some cases with thin necks and some with thick necks? Are you all the same head stamp? Did they all come from the same lot? Things like that need to be evaluated to determine what is causing the actual problem that's resulting in the variation in seating depth that you're worrying so much about whether it's going to change the velocity or not. Because if you fix the problem that's resulting in the variation, you're not going to have to worry about whether it changes the velocity or not. So guys, that's it. Understand the question inside of the question when you're asking a question like that, and be very careful for people like me that have answers to very specific questions but don't understand the question behind it and don't give you the full story, and makes it even worse for you trying to figure out what to do about your velocity and about your loading. And if I don't see you between now and then, Merry Christmas, and I'll see you in the next video.